working with the interactive fill tool. We are now on page 34 of your working file, the subject of the interactive fill tool, and in our next lesson we will look at the eyedropper tool. Well, this is that lesson where you will go, why don't you show me earlier, rather than what we might call a bit of an old-fashioned way. If you recall, we created this brush metal effect by selecting Arrow Object F11 on my keyboard. We added all these little color node points here, and then you created different color perspectives to create the effect we have here, the Brushman effect. Well, there is another way that you will most likely think is easier. I teach everything because people do have different ways of doing. It's best you learn all the options. If we were to select the Interactive Fill tool, which you can see here, Interactive Fill, or let it G to select it, select our object. As you can see, we have aligned with a series of color wheels on it, and F11. If you compare that, all these little color points here are the exact same as the color points there. The Interactive Color Fill tool allows you to move around and, of course, in real time see the result. We can select the color world, move them along, and find two in the result. However, it is that we wanted. Now I am going to fill this with a light gray. So, solid light gray. It starts from scratch, so we select their object, come down, select the Interactive Fill tool, simply click and drag. You will notice across the property bar there are a number of options, and make sure the appropriate options selected first or come back and select it after. It's up to you. We are by default in a linear fill mode. However, you could have selected an alternative, or we can change it on the fly. It's that easy, as you can see. Okay, let's go with linear. To add the color wheels is quite simple. Simply double-click. Every time you double-click, you add a little color wheel, as you can see. Now, what I might do is to select this. Click, and you see the double line around the color wheel. I will click on the gray there. Select that one, and I will make it darker. Select that one, and go to the next one, make that darker, and then go to this one here, and make that darker, and look, with very little effort, it's just that you have to think light, dark, and that's how we create the effect here. So I could double-click to remove the color wheel and spread the effect there a little bit further so it's not quite so harsh. But I might want to look like I have got a highlight going through there. So I will move this up here a little bit, and maybe that one is a little dark. So click on here, bring out the little flyout, and go out slightly lighter. How does that look? And that does look quite good, doesn't it? So you can see using the Interactive Fill tool is quite cool to stretch down a little bit if you want to. You can move positioning around. Close it up, and close create any type of little effect that you want. Okay, well that will be the first thing that I want you to do when it's your turn, is to make this a solid color and create your own brush metal effect in there using the Interactive Fill tool. I am now going to show you how to create this bottom effect, and as you can see, we are going to start to learn about depth of color highlights, and how to create shake and form with highlight and light areas or dark areas. So to create this button or light effect is quite simple. Select the Ellipse tool. Finger on Control to create a perfect ellipse. Now in my case, it already is, and I'm going to again select the Interactive Fill tool, but this time I am going to go with our radial fill. Now by default, it applies the fill. White is always the starting color moving out toward the fill that the object order is. I am simply going to drag is that highlight point. close up the circle. It's not too bold. And then I am going to, in fact, I am going to do that. I am going to move it down the bottom. Pop it down the bottom there like that. There we go. Now, plus on my keyboard, create a duplicate, shrink that down just a little. Now, what do you think I am going to do? First thing I am going to do is to make the outline a light gray. But what am I going to do now? You always can see a bubbling or a highlighting effect there where you are beginning a sense of depth. But watch this again. With my interactive fill tool, if I take the highlight and I pop it on the top over there, say about there, pull it back a little bit, can you see the effect? We now have a sense of depth, don't we? Now I shrink the middle one down a little bit. Now can you see how it kind of looks conical? The one behind looks conical. The one on top looks like it's raised. In fact, if we remove the outline altogether, can you see the effect why? We see we have got a light color down the bottom next to a dark. Up to top, we have got dark next to light. And that creates these illusions, because in reality, it's not really happening, is it? It is purely a light-based illusion. Very easy to create, and of course I will play with it. Increase the size and decrease the size, and you can get all sorts of interesting effects by simply using 2 radial fills. Or let me delete that. I will pop that over there for inspiration. This bottom we have here is exactly the same. It is nothing more than using 3 rectangles. Let's do it. I will select the rectangle, click and drag, create my first rectangle, and I am going to give this an interactive fill from a dark gray through to a white. So I will click and drag, finger on Control. By the way, also create your 15-degree increments, so it helps you to pull a perfectly straight line. Finger on Control. All I need to do is pull or drag a dark gray. Pop it over the top there, bring this up a little bit, finger on Control, so that is probably about right. Notice that little slide in there. When you are dealing with just 2 points, you can move the little slide up, and as you can see, it kind of extends one or other of the colors. In this case, it is extending the white, so it's fading a little further to the point of the line, and it quickly goes through to the darker. And you can go the other way if you want to. In the middle, I usually find is the best option. Now, so there we have created our first rectangle. Plus on the keyboard. Now what I will do is increase this out just a little. Finger Control and finger on Control needs to go behind, so Control page down. Now all I need to do is flip it the other way. So if I flip the other way, look at that. Isn't that very impressive? What have I got? I have got the 2 rectangles. In one, the fill is going one direction, and in the other, the fill is going the other direction, and you can create an effect like that. Give it a nice fit black outline. So we go to 3-point, and there we go. We have got our bottom effect. Place the number 1 on top, shift page up, and that a bottom effect. Again, it's using these interactive fills, light versus dark, and you get these great effects. Now finally, and a very simple one, of course, is what we did for the amplifier sale metros. All I have are numbers of rectangles. You select them, group them together, select your interactive fill tool, click and drag, finger on Control to grab up straight, and I will select the top node of color wall and make that red. Select the bottom one, I will make that green, and I will drag and drop. See the way I am doing it? I will show you in the color yellow. I wasn't thinking in the color yellow into the middle. Right-click to remove the outline, and there you go. The interactive fill tool is really easy to use. So go ahead now, Play with the 4 objects that I've got there for you to play with. Create the little buttons, create this effect, and that will help you to become used to it for future design elements.